So, the UN has released a fairly disturbing and dire warning, something that's fairly unprecedented, at least for my time. I can't say it's unprecedented ever because I'm sure this happened a lot during the Cold War era, but they have issued a warning that the nuclear threat is pressing and more real than ever. Let me just read the headline from what I got from Fox a little bit ago. UN has nuclear warning for the world. Threat could be closer than in a long time. So I'm going to talk about that more later, but it's quite disturbing. Quite disturbing. So, anyways, this is the Centered from Reality podcast. I'm Alex Kapitko. I'm back in the Reno Tahoe area for the next week or so. Same microphone. I did not bring my camera with me, so the video quality might be a little worse for now, but I am sitting here in California for this episode. Got a good ski in today. It's nice to be back, you know. It's 40 degrees and dry, too, which is honestly really nice because I'm used to Chicago now, and it's a lot different, to say the least. Like, here you just need, like, a long sweatshirt and a vest, you know, even if it's in the 40s compared to that. So I guess the positive is Chicago's turned me into quite embattled person with the winter here. So anyways, I have a few things I want to cover today. First, about a troubling report from a British university about the Amazon rainforest that mainly means it's reaching the brink. I also want to cover the Azov battalion in Ukraine, which is at least has ties to a neo-Nazi group, but I think is a neo-Nazi group. And, you know, a few weeks ago I covered the Wagner group, and I thought it would be a good idea to cover this other group that is quite radical as well, but they're on the other side of this conflict. And just because they're fighting with the Ukrainian forces against the bad guys who are Putin doesn't mean they're all good guys on the other side. And they're a neo-Nazi organization, and I think they're probably what caused Putin to say they're going to do denazification of Ukraine, which is obviously preposterous, but they are one of the groups that are actually Nazis. And then lastly, I do want to just give some updates on Ukraine, you know, that attack near the Polish border in Lviv on that military base, and what this could mean for NATO. So anyways, first I would just start to say that it's really irritating when you type Amazon into Google and all you can find is the company, right? The rainforest is not even on the first page anywhere. Like, you would think there would at least be one link or one photo of the Amazon rainforest when you type in Amazon. I mean, it's existed longer than Amazon, the company, but nope. And I know Amazon's a big company, but the other Amazon's cooler, and I think much more important. You know, it's much more important than Jeff Bezos making a shit ton of money. But I want to talk about the Amazon, the rainforest, not the Bezos one, for a bit, because there's a study that was recently published by the Global Systems Institute at the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom, and it talks about how the rainforest is just reaching a tipping point, where it is shifting from a rainforest to more of a savanna. And just so we're on the same page and have our terms clarified, a savanna is what's a mixed woodland or mixed grassland ecosystem, characterized by trees being widely spaced so that the canopy is not closed. You know, the open canopy allows for a lot of light to reach the ground, and it creates a layer of primarily grasses. On the contrary, a rainforest is characterized by a closed and continuous tree canopy. They have a dense, green, moist forest, and they get at least 160 inches of rain a year, and that is mostly found in the tropics. So, you know, so basically when you think of a rainforest, you think of a closed system, right? And that moisture all gets trapped inside of it. And so the worry is that there's going to be enough deforestation in the Amazon that there's not going to be enough trees to create that canopy, and over time it's going to kind of dry out and turn into more of a savanna, like you see in parts of Africa, for example. And so according to the BBC, the Amazon is moving towards this point where there will be a mass die-off of trees. And this study from the Global Systems Institute, as their name may suggest, discusses how a system of issues is leading to this. It discusses the combination from hell, basically, of droughts, fires, and deforestation. And the article says here in quotes that the large swaths could become sparsely forested savanna, which is much less efficient than tropical forest at sucking carbon dioxide from the air. And I think it's important to mention that because of the closed rainforests and the abundance of trees and plant life, right? The rainforest can actually trap a lot of carbon dioxide that otherwise would be released into the atmosphere, and obviously that leads to an uptick of greenhouse gases. So, you know, the Amazon is freaking huge, and so if all of a sudden that turns into a savanna, And I mean, it wouldn't be all of a sudden, but you know what I mean. Yeah. It would be quite problematic, to say the least. And Dr. Chris Bolton is the director of this Global Systems Institute at Exeter. And he basically says that this study is based on several decades of satellite data, satellite coverage, and it's spread out over regions of the Amazon. And Dr. Bolton says that the satellite imagery shows alarming trends in the health of the Amazon rainforest. In quotes here, there are signs of a loss of resilience in more than 75% of the forests, with trees taking longer to recover from the effects of drought, largely driven by climate change, as well as human impacts such as deforestation and fires. Now, I should note that it is still not certain that the Amazon has actually reached this tipping point yet. And Bolton does clarify this. He says that once the process begins, though, they predict it could happen over a matter of decades before a significant chunk of the rainforest is transformed into savanna. And he says this would be a vastly different ecosystem made up of a mixture of grasslands. And that's not obviously going to be as sustainable as what we currently have. And as of now, he also mentions in this that around a fifth of the rainforest has already been lost. And compared to a fifth of the rainforest has been lost compared to the pre-industrial levels, the Institute said. And unfortunately, this is not just, one team of scientists who's maybe raising a panic about this. It's actually in collaboration with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and the Technical University of Munich. And there's a Dr. Bonnie Waring of the Grantham Institute at Imperial College, who said these findings are consistent with the accumulating evidence that the twin pressures of climate change and human exploitation of forests are endangering the world's largest rainforests, which is home to 1 out of every 10 species known to science. And that's insane when you think about it. The Amazon has 1 out of every 10 species known to science. I mean, that's just insane to me. Now, I want to add some more depressing context to this, because that's what we do here. Because as you guys know, we don't want to be happy on the podcast. But other than just helping regulate and control carbon dioxide levels, the Amazon's also very important for the future of scientific discovery, research, and medicine. And that's also something we could lose out on if this tipping point is reached and we see this trend into a savanna happen. So according to the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or the WWF, which is a think tank that focuses on environmentalism in places like the Amazon, it says that the Amazon may be important in curing future diseases because it's also helped with past ones. It says in quotes here, for millennium, humans have used insects, plants, and other organisms in the region for a variety of uses, and that includes agriculture, clothing, and of course, cures for diseases. The article discusses basically how the indigenous people throughout Peru and other parts north in the Amazon and Brazil, places like that you would think of, have basically learned from just generations how to perfect the use of chemical compounds, right, found in many plants and animals. The article continues saying in quotes, knowledge of using these plants is usually held by medicine men who pass on this tradition to an apprentice, a process which has been going on for centuries and that forms an integral part of people's knowledge and identity. End quotes. And here, the problem with this is that as the forest continues to decrease, the knowledge of these plants for the benefit of future generations will also decrease or completely go away, right? And to go even further down this issue, studies even as far back as the 90s have found that less than half of 1% of flowering plant species have been studied in detail for their medicinal potential. So in the Amazon and other rainforests like this, less than half of 1% of these species have actually been studied. So think about all the things we haven't found out there, right? Think about all that potential. And so if the Amazon keeps declining and goes past this tipping point into a savanna, think about all the things that could be lost. Think about all the potential aid for health issues into the future. And just to give a little context, I guess, on a few of the plants that have been discovered in the Amazon that have had medicinal properties or have been beneficial to society. One is quinine, which is a muscle relaxant and the first effective medicine used to treat malaria. And it was actually discovered by the Quechua people, which are an indigenous group that still resides in Peru and Bolivia. And they found it. They knew how to get it used in the proper way. And eventually it became a huge aid in Europe and the New World at the time. And obviously now it's in tonic water as well. But it's been very important. And it took, A, the Amazon existing, and B, people growing up with generations of knowledge to be able to find this, use this, and then help it spread into the rest of the world, right? Also, there's other groups such as vinsterine and vinblastine, which are medicines used to treat different types of cancer and actually are found on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. They also come from the Amazon. And I mean, that's where my brain goes with this is think about some of the potential medicines that could be found out there to help with other forms of cancer, other forms of health defects, dementia, even though I don't know if we'll ever really find a cure for that per se, but you have to think. And I'm just highlighting those few to give you an idea, but they all came from the Amazon that I mentioned. I mean, and also just in a general sense, I think this is sad because the Amazon is just beautiful. I had the lucky opportunity when I was younger to stay at an eco lodge deep in a subset of the Amazon in Peru back with my dad when I was much younger, and it was just beautiful. I was so lucky to do it, and just walking through the Amazon at night and just listening. It's kind of creepy, but it's also just beautiful. And I think all of us want our kids to be able to do that one day, and I also want the indigenous people to be able to enjoy it like they have for generations before. And if we don't really get our shit together, this could be the end of that, if it's not already. The thing that I think should be at least mentioned here is that Jair Bolsonaro, who is the president of Brazil, who in my opinion is just a complete ass and dangerous leader, he's made this country worse off and has completely neglected any protections of the Amazon. He has expanded mining. He has allowed farmers to expand their slash and burn tactics into indigenous land. And he's just denied any semblance of climate change existing. And I've been reading a few places over this week that Bolsonaro is apparently using the war in Ukraine as a pretext to expand mining into indigenous lands. It also isn't just a pretext, but also we just have to remember that Ukraine and Russia are key producers of things like nitrogen, which are very big components in a lot of different types of fertilizers, right? And apparently Bolsonaro wants to expand production of different sources of fertilizer to offset this issue because it would be good for him and there would definitely be demand in the world as this shortage happens. But the problem is that I understand that we need countries to start filling these gaps where Ukraine and Russia may be struggling right now. But what he's doing on the side involving the environment and indigenous groups cannot be neglected here either, because two things can be true at once. Yes, we need to fill the gaps here, but we also can't just start ruining the lives of indigenous people even more and neglecting the environment. And Al Jazeera has an update on this from last week, I think it was. It says here that, in quotes, Brazil's far-right president has pushed for a law that could allow mining on indigenous reservations, seizing on global fertilizer shortages caused by the Ukraine war. The article also discusses how, in quotes, Brazil is one of the world's top food producers and the largest importer of potash powder that is obtained from the ashes of burned wood and sometimes used as a fertilizer. The country relies on imports for 85% of the fertilizer used for its grain crops. And a quarter of Brazil's demand for potash has usually been met by Russia, which has halted its exports. End quotes. So Brazil obviously has a shit ton of agriculture, and now the country Russia that gives them the majority of the fertilizer for it now is kind of out of business or canceled or pariah state, whatever you want to say. And to kind of asterisk this is likely another reason the Amazon is being threatened, right? As Brazil has gotten more wealthy in recent decades, they've really become a crucial center for beef, ethanol, corn, and just other crucial food products like that. And so we have to remember that as more and more demand around the world is for Brazilian beef, for example, or ethanol, or corn, which obviously ethanol comes from corn, they're going to have to clear more land to do it. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So that's the problem is Brazil's already clearing so much land for beef and ethanol, etc. But now if they're going to start also making and growing and exporting fertilizer, they're going to need a lot more land for that. And yeah, I just worry that we could see some serious ramifications for that going forward. So the more depressing but also crucial part of this article is just how this is another thing Bolsonaro's doing, right? He's pretty much done everything possible, like I've mentioned. The article discusses how he has cut back environmental enforcement in the Amazon. He's defunded the government's indigenous protection agency, which is called FUNAI. He has also pushed for more mining and commercial farming in the Amazon, and it's all under the guise of creating jobs and reducing poverty. And he's one of those people who just cannot see the forest through the trees. No pun intended, I guess. And he's so focused on jobs and the economy that he just doesn't understand that in the long term, this actually could hurt jobs and the economy and just the world. It's, it's hard to have a job if, the world's pretty much ending because of how just polluted and gross it is, right? But it does unfortunately look like this bill is going through now and could be passed probably any time. I don't know, while we're recording or later into the week, because this article is a little bit old, I think a couple days. And so, yeah, I think Bolsonaro is going to be able to pass this because he's good at circumventing the legislation process. He's also running for re-election, as far as I can tell, which would happen, I believe, in October. And I really hope this guy loses because he just puts the fuckhead in fascism. Sorry, excuse my language, but that's the only way I can really say it. And he is contributing to completely desecrating the Amazon. And if this guy wins another term, I don't really know how you save the Brazilian Amazon, especially because this guy is obviously not going to be very helpful in that at all.